Welcome everybody. Thanks for coming. This is the Lake Bluff School District 65 Board of Education Committee, the whole meeting for February 16th, 2016. Can we please have a roll taken?
Barry.
Present.
Sherlock present. Gadshaw. Present. Hay.
Here.
Hood.
Here.
Morales.
Present.
Ryder. Present.
All present and accounted for. We have a quorum. We can begin. Can you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to offer the opportunity to anybody in the audience who would like to address the board to do so now. If not, we'll move on to our agenda items and offer the opportunity for the board to suggest a discussion item or a future agenda item. If anybody would like to bring something up that we need to be addressing, please do so now. Okay.
I got this to put on the agenda. We have committees where some of us have volunteered to meet with different groups. And I recall volunteering to be one of the two people that would do a kind of a collaboration meeting with people from the Lake Forest school districts. So I'm not sure where that is, or if that's something that we pursue as a board, or if that's something you do. I just wanted to touch base back on that and see if we could get that started.
I would Terry, let's put that on the agenda. I think we may have a meeting in March.
Okay.
I don't have a definite confirmation on it. So as soon as I know, I will let all of you know. At one point we had 3 boards meeting in March and I had given you that date. That meeting has been canceled. And we want to do it with reps, but I don't have a definitive from them. So put that on to bring up at the next meeting if I haven't got it back to you.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? So we're going to now go to our discussion items, and because we have a visitor, we're going to rearrange just a little bit. We're going to do the middle school renovation update first. It's brief, and Jean's going to give us a little walkthrough on that, and then a representative from the local Kiwanis Club is going to talk to us very briefly.
Actually, I think what I'm going to do is introduce David Lee from the Kiwanis Club. Actually, if you want to come on up, I'll give a little bit of history. Mr. Lee started calling us about a year ago, Nate Blackmer and myself, very interested in donating something special for the new building because there was a lot of positive talk on that. I believe, if I remember, your children or your child went through our school district?
Both my children went through this.
And had a great education, of course. And so I'm going to turn it over to him. There's been some discussion about what Kiwanis is going to be donating and why. I thought it would be best to have Mr. Lee explain it, and then we can thank him.
And ask questions. So yes, okay. Thank you for inviting me to tonight's meeting to discuss how the Kiwanis Foundation plans on partnering with the school district. Again, my name is David Lee. I've been a lifelong resident of Lake Bluff and a member of Kiwanis for 19 years. Many of you might know Kiwanis through the 4th of July pancake breakfast, and this year we'll mark our 45th breakfast, and we're going to add on a hot dog hamburger cookout after the parade. So come join us for a burger and a breakfast. Come, and we need volunteers to help us serve. Information about Kiwanis and the foundation. Kiwanis is a service organization that was established in the community back in 1923. The current motto is to serve the children of the world. So the club looks for ways to help children, and what better ways to help children than our school children. Therefore, in late 2014, we established a nonprofit 501c3 foundation with the hopes of attracting business and personal donations. With the upcoming renovation addition project, we felt that we would partner with the school district and make an impact. After working with Mr. Blackmer and Dr. Sophie, we first decided we would construct a new electronic school sign out in front. Unfortunately, a changeable sign is against village ordinances, so we went back to the drawing board. Another project that we considered was redoing the playing field for the old East School still. But this project probably costs about $50,000. It's a little bit too much for our first foundation project to accomplish. So the idea of creating a new ramp within a safe and secure entrance appealed to us. I understand that some residents feel that the school district should be paying for this type of project rather than having an outside group pay for it. I guess, sure, the foundation could have looked at supplying, tables, books, instruments, or technology equipment, but if that's the case, shouldn't the district be paying for those too? These entities, the school district, even the park district and the village, can't provide everything. That's where the residents and the business partners need to come together to support each other. For years, the Alliance of Excellence has provided additional wish list items to the school, but the Kiwanis Foundation wanted to do something different. The new ramp not only would be used by students, but by parents attending teacher conference, families cheering on the Bobcats, visitors attending a play or a concert, not to mention potential new residents looking at the area in schools to raise their children. Also, this will allow the district to free up an extra $20,000 to maybe be used for something else. We don't know what that may be yet. All in all, the project seemed like a worthwhile endeavor for the foundation to tackle. Our goal is to raise $20,000. Even before the public announcement last week, we've raised half the funds. Since the announcement, we've raised an additional $1,000. But we still need the community's support to raise the balance. So I'd ask residents and people and businesses to visit our website, KiwanisLBLF.org, and make an online donation.
Can you say that again?
Kiwanis, KIWANISLBLF, for the Kiwanis of Lake Bluff, Lake Forest.
.com?
.org.
.org. Okay.
Yes. So I guess if there's any questions from the board or administration.
I would also point out, you talked about people being able to use that. It's an ADA ramp. It's required, but it's also we intend to open the building up to a broader spectrum of the community as a community place to have community events, and our seniors and some of our older folks in the community will have more access. Will be simpler. Will be easier with a ramp like that as well.
So we just figured there'll be a lot of different people that could use it, and it's a needed item.
Are you doing any other marketing or increasing your visibility to the school?
Oh, we're trying.
So that other residents and especially parents of kids who attend the school are aware of what you're trying to do, and maybe they.
Well, the district has put it out on their site for us.
Who has?
The district, the school district has. We've actually talked to some of the local papers, and they actually put the initial blurb out to the community of what we were looking at doing. But we're thinking about we got to devise one of these thermometers to go out in the street corner here to show we're looking for 20 and slowly move it up and work on that way.
Well,
so it'll be a difficult task for us, but I think we'll make it.
We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Really appreciate the spirit of collaboration. That's great.
Thank you.
And coming to talk before us is very helpful, just to make sure people understand the perspective. So, thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it.
And you always see David's face around the community whenever there's something going on.
Yeah. All right.
All right. And Jean, you want to do the rest of the middle school update?
Very briefly, next week, Craig and Stephanie will be here to go through what they went through with us. It was really cool today. It was a 3D computer program that showed all the different colors of the walls and what's going to be on the floors, the color of the floors, the carpet squares of the floors. We were both commenting today that the color, what do they call it? The color palette looks very different when it was put with all the floor stuff. It was just a lot calmer. It's very calm. The piece that I like the best about the colors they picked is they spent time going down to the beach in Lake Bluff and tried to blend it with the whole, color and the feel of Lake Bluff. So I thought it was really cool today, and you're going to see special rooms. My favorite is definitely the student cafeteria looking up to the library resource center. Actually, when you walk in the building, there's going to be a big window that opens up into the big presentation stair. it's going to be very exciting. So you're going to get that presentation next week. There is a bid opening tomorrow at 1 o'clock, and we're hoping for favorable results on that. Although I've always been told hope is not a strategy, but I don't think we strategize with that. So,
So we'll get a finance update too, probably the next
yes, you will get a finance update
Or
next
budget
week also.
update, yeah.
Budget. And as you know, and spread the word, our official groundbreaking ceremony is going to be Monday, February 29th, which I've heard is good luck, by the way, February 29th, because it only comes once every 4 years. 9 o'clock in the morning at the middle school. It will be complete with hard hats for all of you that come, shovels,
Golden shovel.
pictures, speeches. Kids are going to play some kind of music. I'm not sure which one yet. And then there'll be snacks afterwards in the, I think we're doing it in the student cafeteria. I also want to share, while I've got all of you, Nate sent his apologies, and I need to broadcast this publicly too. He was informed late this afternoon that they have 2 flights going to Washington, D.C. tomorrow. The American flight is fine. The United flight canceled. So that's all right. It's handled, but now the flight is leaving instead of 8 a.m. it's leaving at 6 a.m., which means the parents on that flight have to have our kids at the school at 3:30. So I talked to him. He's handling parent phone calls and was extremely appreciative when I told him that he didn't need to come tonight.
Yeah.
So I'm sure we're all thinking about him.
Been there, done that.
So we've all been there, but not with a whole flight of students. So,
Anything else? Okay, anything else to add on the middle school?
that's it for
They
renovations
said that the
Friday.
trailer could pull in
Friday.
Friday.
What's that?
The trailer,
The trailer.
the construction trailer, the office.
So the kids will be out there when the Blackhawks visit the president.
The Blackhawks visit the president.
Is that this week?
Yes, tomorrow.
Oh,
Thursday,
yes.
Thursday.
I didn't even think about that. We'll have to, can you text Nate to let him know that? Okay, Margaret handled it. So we've got exciting things going on with the middle school. I have been told that while the official groundbreaking will be at 9 a.m., they are actually breaking ground at 7 a.m. that day.
So they will put a shovel in the ground and
They need to get going. I've been on their case because it needs to be done on time.
So it'll officially happen at 9, but they'll actually do it at 7. So
Right.
Yeah.
we're there for like the 64th shovelful or something.
Probably.
Right?
65th, the 65th for District 65.
65.
Do we have, if we don't, we probably should have something on our website that updates people that the construction trailer will be coming in at a certain time, because people, I don't know. if
No, we need to work on that piece. Terry and I will work on that a little bit tomorrow.
Because people in that immediate vicinity will notice that and will start to get curious. So.
Well, the other piece that we've promised all along is we will be doing weekly email blasts. And since I'm so heavily involved and Nate's so heavily involved, the 2 of us will be the ones that do the email blasts ourselves. Kevin is going to design a really nice template on School Messenger. And it'll just be very brief updates on Fridays. And we can send it out saying the trailer has arrived and this is what we're doing. Weekly email blasts, and we're still in the process of setting up the weekly meetings and when exactly those will be. Although I think we have them on Tuesday or Wednesdays, right? I've got to get those dates together.
We're also looking at setting up a webcam for the site, so that may be up and running soon, so people can watch the progress.
Exciting news.
Okay, so now we'll go back to our originally scheduled programming. Item A, which was the multi-age program, which Jean and team will take us through.
So I have started out, this is the same presentation we gave to 2 groups of parents. We started out by introducing everybody, but you already know who everybody is. I will share with you that Nate has also been a part of these presentations, and when we get to that point, we're going to need to kind of talk through what Nate's part was for this. So
our meetings were on February 2nd and February 4th.
One was in the evening and one was during the daytime after the parents interested in enrichment meeting. We had a total of 10 parents at both meetings combined. So our goals for the meeting were to provide the data that was used for the decision-making process, to give further information about our decision-making process and further information regarding the transition for our current 4th grade multi-age students, and to answer any further questions and really to get feedback also from parents about things that they really felt were unique to the multi-age program that we could look at adapting for traditional classrooms as well.
So all of you are used to looking at our data from ECRA. That was new for many of our parents, and so we explained the data that we gathered from ECRA and that we had given to ECRA over the past several years. But really what we had done is that we asked ECRA to go back all the way to the 11-12 school year and follow that group of students through to 8th grade, look at their propensity, so how quickly are students growing, look at their achievement, and then look at their overall growth, and really focused on the growth. That is obviously the most important piece. That's the piece that we look at overall, day to day. That's the piece that impacts us in our day-to-day life, and so that's the piece that we really tried to zero in on. As we looked at the results from the study, the piece that we tried to help people to understand was that there was not really any statistical difference between the students in the multi-age classrooms and the students in the traditional age classrooms. While parents and families had reported to us that there felt like there was some sort of an intangible difference between the two, when we ran the numbers and when we look at the standardized measures, there was really not a statistically significant difference when we looked at their propensity, when we looked at their achievement, and really, most importantly, when we looked at their growth. The other pieces here is that back in February of 2015, so a year ago, we initially did our initial review of how many parents and families wished for their 3rd graders to go into 4th, 5th multi-age for this current school year. And for the first time, we had fewer families request to go into multi-age than we had spaces for. And so that was really sort of an indicator for us that we had a situation on our hands that was a little bit unusual. And Margaret was in a situation where we were asking people to go into multi-age, which is never a situation that we want to be in. We always want to give people what they, sort of their preference. And then, as you all know, our 3rd grade class, and we'll be talking about this in the enrollment discussion in just a second, our 3rd grade class is our smallest class overall. It's a class of 72 students. And so knowing that fewer families had requested multi-age for this school year, and knowing that this 3rd grade class is very, very small, we needed to get some indication of whether or not this was still an interest for parents and families really early on, so that we could do some planning. We were fine with sort of whatever we found that was before we had done anything with ECRA, that was before we asked them to run any of those numbers. But really, when we surveyed parents and families in October of 2015, and we got an 80% response rate, which for any survey, typically when you do a survey, even for a 1-question survey, the response rate you hope is somewhere above 30%. This is an 80% response rate. 23 people indicated a preference for multi-age for the 16-17 school year, and then 34 people indicated a preference for traditional for the 16-17 school year. We put that sort of into our matrix of the board class size guidelines that we have all discussed here in the past. of between 21 and 25 students in sections of 4th and 5th grade. And so what we end up with then with, for the 15-16 school year, you can see that up on top is for multi-age, for this school year, what we have is 20 sections of 22, 20, 21, and 22. And typically what we see year over year is that when 5th graders exit, then we have a new group of 4th graders come in to replace those almost perfectly and exactly. That would not have been the case with the number of people who requested multi-age, you can see, and it would have put us well outside of our class size guidelines and put us in sort of a tenuous spot. And so that was sort of an indicator to us that we needed to dig a little bit further into the data to see, like, is there really anything else here that we, is there really any difference between the two options for the students, and should we really be offering this to begin with?
I think another really important piece in here though is it's not as easy as just going down to 3 sections. Multi-age, you have to have an even number of sections because of the way they do math. So if we went down to 2 sections, the class sizes would be primarily all 5th graders. And if we went up to 4 sections, you can see where we went with numbers. So it's not a matter of going to 3.
On the top chart, you can see that the number of 4th graders this year is already smaller. So we have 11, 11, 9, and 8. So when they rolled over onto the bottom chart as 5th graders, we had a smaller number there than usual, then add that to the small number of people kind of indicating that that would be their preference. So, and the reason why those, it needs to be an even number is because they do pair up with the teacher to, one teacher teaches 1 grade level math and the other, so one does 4th grade, one does 5th grade. And so currently what we're going to have, you'll see later on, is that we'll have 2 kind of hybrid classes that are all 5th grade students that we're combining all the multi-age students together. So we really will have 2 classes right now that are kind of a hybrid for this next year. So just to talk a little bit about the decision making as a team, I know you as a board are aware of some of the conversations that we have been having. Last year in the fall and the spring, we did meet with the multi-age staff just to review the ECR data from last year. Just to, we wanted to start having conversations. At those meetings, we talked about the presentation of the data showing that there really wasn't much statistical difference between the programs. Last year then, we reviewed that projected 2nd to 3rd grade enrollment data, and we knew coming up this year we were really going to have to look closely because of how small that 3rd grade class is. Then this October, we did the parent poll that we showed you, the 80% response rate, and ECR then compiled all the data and sent it to us in late December of this year. So it was not until then, our administrative team, January 5th, that we had been having conversations that really we needed to make a decision between having our rolled over enrollment and the ECR data. It was at that January 5th meeting at administrative team that we talked about a final decision and then a communication plan. So when we talked about laying out that communication plan, there were a few things that were important. One was just timing for parents. Parent-teacher conferences were at the end of January. We felt like this was a time oftentimes in 3rd grade that parents start talking to their classroom teachers in 3rd grade about what should I do for next year. So we really decided to have that timeline occur in January. So on the 19th then, Tracy and I met with the multi-age teachers first as just a small group to talk with them about the decision, and then we met with 4th grade teachers and then 5th grade teachers because they're also impacted next year in some changes. Then we met with the entire Lake Bluff Elementary staff that afternoon right after school, and then we sent out the email. One of the reasons why we felt it was so important to have the communication happen really all within that same day was we do have some overlap with community members and faculty members. We really wanted the information to be consistent and accurate and all happening at about the same time, while also respecting our teaching staff that they got the information first. So some of the factors that went into the decision making, one of the biggest factors is that with our services, right now we service 8 grade levels. Multi-age is its own grade level, and between pre-K on up through 5th grade, including multi-age, we have 8 grade levels in the building. What that does is it reduces the support that students can have. We have a certain number of support and enrichment staff, and because of scheduling, they're spread out over 8 grade levels. So reducing that multi-age grade level gives us about 20% more efficiency as related to speech, language, social work, OT, and PT, especially enrichment services, and then reading and math support. So currently an example is we block the scheduling so that all classes in a grade level have math at the same time. The reason why we do that is because some students might take a higher level math, and so they have to be able to shift on their schedule. So, for example, Tom Brown, who is our math enrichment specialist, he works with those students that are doing the 6th grade math. So that means that math block, he can't service any other students in multi-age or 5th grade because he's already being accounted for. So that's just one of the ways that the schedule is spread out kind of thin. We talked about the growth comparisons and the data. We talked about the scheduling, but the other impact on the scheduling is by reducing that 1 grade level, we can create a more efficient schedule with our fine arts and specials teachers, and thus creating a little more common planning time for our teachers. It's really important for us that the teachers do have that time every week. So currently they have 1 common planning period a week. That's a 30-minute planning period. By the time you bring your kids to wellness and go stop in the restroom and head on up to your meeting, that's about a 20-minute meeting a week. So we're hoping that that allows for a little more common planning time and creating more flexibility in those academic blocks. We also feel that students will hopefully transition to Lake Bluff Middle School as a cohesive unit. One of the things that Nate spoke about when we gave the presentation at both meetings was that at the middle school, as much as we hear that students from multi-age are going into the middle school with a lot of leadership opportunities and confidence, we hear just as many, if not more, teachers and parents and students reporting that there's a huge social difference between the traditional and multi-age children, especially in 6th grade, and it really takes most of the year in 6th grade to kind of bring that group together. 7th and 8th grade teachers report that they really, if they had to point out in their classes who's multi-age and who's traditional, they aren't able to do that. That they're, by that point, they're really behaving the same, they have the same student characteristics, but they're also a cohesive unit. In 6th grade, the teachers, there is a lot of social and emotional time that is spent in that division. Even just
still, sorry,
go ahead.
It still came out pretty loud and clear during the 8th grade graduation video last year, and that's been pretty consistent over time. That, you know, they came into Lake Bluff Middle School as, you know, traditional, and now we're, you know, traditional and multi-age, and now we're just one class, that sort of thing, and it plays itself out in interesting ways.
Even a couple weeks before we had these specific meetings, Nate said there was an issue on the playground with 6th grade where the kids were trying to split up in teams, multi-age versus traditional, and, you know, halfway through a 6th grade year, and it really did have some social implications. So that was, we feel like we can hopefully provide the leadership opportunities that multi-age families really feel were a huge component that isn't measurable, and that we can look at what was provided to those students and use that as a springboard for all traditional students. We talked a little bit about the number of families requesting multi-age decreasing, and this past summer, I actually recruited incoming 5th grade students to be in multi-age classrooms because of that imbalance and because we didn't have enough students. So it felt like that was going to become an annual thing where I was recruiting students to be in the classrooms, and that was another factor in the decision making.
I'm appointed to talk a little bit about communication. I think what we've heard loud and clear, and we acknowledge, everybody felt like the message via email was very cold and informal. And we have not acknowledged that. We certainly understand how people feel that way. Our priority though was to make sure everybody got the exact same message at the exact same time, knowing we have staff that are also community members. It is also a very, it's a topic in Lake Bluff that really creates a very passionate feeling one way or the other. And it was not our desire for parents to be pitted against parents. I'm going to say, and I've shared it at the meetings, that I'd rather have parents angry with me than mad at each other, because people are very passionate one way or the other. Margaret will share a little bit about some of the feedback that she's had. I would say, since this has all gone down, I have probably received an equal amount of parents that are unhappy versus happy about the decision. Margaret's going to tell you a little bit differently than that. It was very important for us to meet with the teaching staff first, so that they had some time to process. We have met with any interested parent, privately, groups, whatever the case may be. And I'm going to have you talk a little bit about the feedback that you've received.
Yep, so I, at the beginning, had really about 50-50 as far as the feedback within that first day or two. The communication about, hey, that's a great idea, we like that direction that you're headed towards, were really just a response to the email that went out, and kind of a kind and polite affirmation. They weren't folks that felt as passionately about the decision to move to traditional as those who were feeling worried and upset about the decision to move away from multi-age. So then that first week had several parents, less than 10, I would say, between 7 and 9 parents who we either met with or spoke on the phone or communicated via email regarding the decision, and they were very concerned about the phasing out of the multi-age. And then really it was, a lot of those parents were repeated in the meetings that we had, where we had about 10 people total. The few weeks after, we really started getting a few more just unsolicited, mostly emails, saying, we think this is a great direction, we are really happy about this, maybe because of experiences at the middle school their students had, or struggles that parents had making the right decision from 3rd to 4th, being nervous about, I just wasn't sure and I didn't know if I would make the right decision. So I got probably more feedback in favor of the all traditional, but not as passionate feedback. So I really do understand that emotional connection that families had to the multi-age program, and we really did meet with everybody. So just transition-wise, we wanted to be sure that parents knew what would be happening with the 4th graders that are in the multi-age program currently. And we are able to group the students that have been working together in math in both classrooms. They will form one class. So the students in Ms. Plapp and Mr. Ellis's class currently have math together with Ms. Plapp, and so they will be together in a classroom, and one of those teachers will be their 5th grade teacher. And then likewise, the students in Mrs. Lennox and Mr. Nillis's class, they are currently grouped together for math as well, and they will be together as a class, and either Mr. Nillis or Mrs. Lennox will be their teacher. One teacher from each pair will definitely be announced by spring vacation. And their curriculum will include 5th grade math. They will have 4th and 5th grade a blend of the English language arts. This year they have focused on 5th grade, but they use a rubric for writing, and reading also is very flexible, so they'll be focusing on both curricula. And then 4th grade science and social studies, because this year was a rotation for 5th grade science and social studies, so the 4th grade students this year will need to have the 4th grade science and social studies next year. Those are not subject areas where you need to build skills horizontally, so it should work, or vertically, so that should work out just fine. But another reason why we want to keep those students together next year in kind of their hybrid classes. And then we really are, yes?
It would just be for one cycle until they're all out.
Correct, yes. There never is a time that you could really make that a clean break because of the alternating of years. We could have, if we were in fourth grade social studies and science this year, we would have been in fifth grade ELA. So it would have always been a time where we needed to have a transitional year. And the numbers actually work out really well for that this year. We really are looking at some leadership opportunities for all fifth grade students. We heard loud and clear that that was the intangible piece that we really can't measure in data, and we understand that. So looking at mentoring of younger students, buddy classes with a younger grade, some possible mentoring with fourth grade or sixth grade, and then we got some great feedback from parents who attended the meetings. Things like right now they use Google Classroom, so it would be really easy to use Google Classroom with their buddy classes either in the building or over at the middle school. Other Skyping opportunities even outside of our school where we can use technology to partner with younger students to create those leadership opportunities. This year we also added student council to LBES, and the fifth graders take a leadership role in that organization right now as well. So we're really looking at lots of opportunities for students. So any questions from all of you?
I would just like to make a comment briefly. My son is in multi-age this year, so I look at this issue both as a parent and as a school board member, and I feel like I'm fine with the plan. I mean, we're happy with the situation he's in this year, but we'll be, I'm sure, delighted with how things go next year too. As a school board member, though, I feel like, you know, our town is so small that a lot of times people get attached to things and feel that they should be a part of making decisions to change or not change something. And I can understand that because, you know, they recall that their other children went through it and stuff. But when you look at the data that you had to consider to make this decision, I think it's really clear that you guys had to be the ones to make that call. And I just appreciate you taking all the time that you have to both look at all the elements of the decision and, you know, really be open to communicating with people that wanted to come forward and do that. So I just want to say thanks for being so thorough.
Thanks, we appreciate that. We did our two parents that attended after the meeting on the 4th really had the exact same comments. They were very positive and really liked to see the data and really just all the decision-making talking points. Mm-hmm. So we appreciate that. We know it was not an easy decision for a lot of families, and that's one of the great things about Lake Bluff is it feels like a family. So you want to work through problems. You don't want to just ignore them because it does feel like a family, and those problems will fester if you don't really give time to everybody who's feeling anxious about it.
I guess I have a comment that I think was in here, but I just want to highlight it, and that is multi-age has been part of our community for, what, 15 years? I don't know, longer than that?
At least 10.
And I think it provided some unique opportunities. I think what we've seen over the course of the last 10 years is much more differentiation within a classroom. And differentiation doesn't happen at the 4th grade level and 5th grade level. It happens at multiple levels in every classroom. And that's an evolution that we're seeing. And that's an evolution that Common Core, for better or for worse, gives the teachers the tools to do, as we've learned. And so, to me, it's hard to break with tradition. It was a beautiful tradition. All 3 of my kids were in it. And they remember it fondly. But I think it is that evolution to help teach all children to their best potential, to their greatest potential. And just that nature of the differentiation of curriculum that we're seeing that no one had the clue about 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. Really makes the difference, really tells me anyway that this is the time to make that change in addition to all the data that you provided.
Thank you. I know we agree that a contributing factor has been the Common Core standards, making every classroom teaching the same content with the same curriculum. A teacher's style is different, but when the teachers plan, the multi-age teachers plan with the grade level teachers to prepare and plan for math and English language arts and social studies and science. When you walk into classrooms, even the pacing is pretty close within a few days. So that's a difference from 5 years ago, 6, 7 years ago, where those multi-age classrooms really did have a curriculum that felt different and perhaps more challenging. And so I think that's added to what has happened with the number of requests decreasing is because that consistency now with the curriculum has really made the programs more similar than not.
I think the key piece with that though, and this on a personal level, was one of the reasons that I think cemented it for me. The elimination of the 4 or 5 grade level really means that we can service more kids. That might be the lower kids that need support that way. It might be the average kid that needs support in a different subject. It might be the enrichment kids.
Yeah.
But we have all these specialists and we can't service as many kids because of all the different grade levels. So when we can service more kids, that is very important. And then the other piece that came through loud and clear, because we really listened very hard to the parent concerns, that is, if there truly are unique leadership experiences, those should be offered to all of our kids, not just a certain grade level. So these are things that, we took good notes. Tracy took great notes for us in the parent meetings, and we're really going to do our best to replicate and maybe come up with some new leadership type experiences for our kids at those grade levels.
One thing, just in terms of dollars and cents, I'll make an observation on it. We tried during the last contract negotiations to come up with creative ways to increase planning time, right? And creative ways to figure out when our teachers could meet to discuss how to better educate our children, right? And there's actually, if you increase the length of the day or add a day, there's actually dollars attached to that. If we can pick up even one more planning period a week out of eliminating a grade level, I mean, that's pretty simple math. So I agree, it's very hard to go away from the tradition of being not traditional, but it is, it's an important and brave decision. So I appreciate your leadership.
We appreciate your support too. Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you very much. That was good. All right, so we now move on to the licensed staffing plan. I think we bring Dr. Rubenstein back to the podium.
Yes, and I will do a quick introduction. As usual, every February we always bring staffing to you. We approve, instead of certificated, I'm going to be saying licensed now, because as our policy members know, every single policy that had the word certificated now needs to be changed to licensed. So we now have a licensed staffing plan to make our lives even that much more interesting. But we start staffing as early as December and look at numbers, which is where the multi-age discussion came in. We look at it as a team. We're very critical of all the numbers and ask a lot of questions. And the bottom line, Kevin is going to walk you through it, but the bottom line is that we will be recommending we have a staffing plan for licensed staff that remains the same as this past year. Kevin.
You did it.
I think they need a little bit.
Okay, all right. So we, as Dr. Sophie has told you, we have rolled over and made some projections for the 2016-17 school year at both of the buildings. Just some assumptions that you should know about and some updates on where our enrollment currently stands. So we typically assume at this point in the year that our kindergarten will be around 85 students. That is based on a rolling 7-year average. That's about where we've been. Sometimes we've been a little bit higher, sometimes we've been a little bit lower, but that's typically about where we've been. As of this afternoon, we are actually at 73. I know it says 71 on there. That was correct when we put it together. But we expect that by the fall, when everybody comes here, that there will be 85 kindergartners there. And then the remainder of the grade levels are based on students who are currently enrolled in that grade level. And we decided this year for the first time to open up pre-registration for the following school year. So we've had a number of families already indicate that they are that they have moved into Lake Bluff provide verification of the fact that they live in Lake Bluff and that they'll be enrolling in our schools for the next school year. And so the numbers that you see on the screen for the other grade levels for grade 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all just indicators of current enrollment and pre-registrations for this school year. So the only change in staffing, so to speak, for Lake Bluff Elementary School that we are proposing is that currently in second grade, there are 5 sections of second grade because there are 101 students in the current second grade. That class will move up to third grade next year, and so that third grade, which is currently 4 sections, would move to 5 sections. And that second grade would move to 4 sections, would be what we're proposing to remain within class size guidelines.
And this was something, this past year, we had to open up a section of third grade.
Correct.
Remember this summer we made a change? We had that meeting outside that we
Yep.
because we actually got more students in a grade level. So again, we base this not only on the current numbers, but we try to do our best as far as our trend data for kindergarten. And we try to use those guidelines that were set to make sure that we don't go too high. And this is something that we monitor all summer. So
Stay tuned.
stay tuned. Questions on elementary? All right, we're covering for Nate, so.
Then middle school is very much the same thing. We have the middle school model in place at the middle school, a little bit of a smaller class coming in to 6th grade. As we have gone over the enrollment over the last 12 years, that class has grown by about 1 or 2 students as they move from 5th to 6th grade, but that has not always been the case. And so we just have to sort of wait and see what happens. So overall, we are projecting and estimating that the middle school enrollment will remain approximately the same that it is right now, with class sizes ranging from 15 to a large of 20 or 21.
A couple things that I'm going to add about the middle school schedule. First of all, believe it or not, this came up in our multi-age conversations too, because parents wanted to make sure we were not eliminating the multi-age model. I'm not sure if they understand what the multi-age model is, but, or the middle school model, sorry. So it did come up in our multi-age meetings though. So that's important to know. The other piece is Nate and I have talked a lot about the schedule, and one of the things that he's going to be working on next year is not eliminating, but kind of working through what each of the constraints is. So for instance, right now, one of the things that came up in our discussions, every middle school child gets to pick what language they're going to study. In order to do that, we have to have X amount of teachers on staff to do that. So what we're going to do is make a list of all the constraints on a middle school schedule so that we have a better understanding of it, to really make sure that we're running things efficiently, and to really prioritize. You know, that might be something that we want to ask parents, you know, how important is it for you to pick your language? I'm not saying we're going to eliminate it. I'm just saying how important would that be for you to pick a language. A lot of the middle schools now are going strictly to only Spanish. A lot of schools, you get to pick between, you get to go 6th grade, you pick one, and then you got to stay in that route. We have a lot of different options here, and that may be something we want to keep. But in order to do that, when you look at these numbers, you have to understand that what all the constraints are behind the numbers for the teaching staff. And I think as board members, that would be something I would want to know. So we'll be working on that piece.
And you guys have said in the past, correct me if I'm wrong, that you typically get a bump influx of students between elementary and middle, right? Is that something I recall?
We have some years
Not all,
Not all years.
from parochial schools.
You know, there was one year where we got a bump of plus 12. There was another year where we fell by 4. So I think the average that we've seen is like plus 2.
So if you don't get any bump, you have some differing class sizes coming down the pipeline in the
Yes,
next few
correct.
years.
Which is why this next year is a good time to
Yeah.
examine our schedule.
Right.
However, I would also tell you, with a brand new building, we may wind up having a
Yeah.
lot more kids.
Yeah.
You just never know.
And that's the other thing is that I can say with near certainty that the numbers that I'm presenting to you tonight are going to be inaccurate as of September 8th or 9th. And that is actually a really good thing. We will have lots of parents and families who move to us over the summer, and that is really a good thing. The housing market has picked up in Lake Bluff, and people really want to move into our district. So that is a really positive thing. So overall is on the first page of your packet. We're recommending a net change of 0 FTE overall. In the first section is all of the classroom teachers. The second section is in the pupil support services, social workers, psychologists, speech language pathologists. That next section is some of our leadership pieces with Kelly Bay's position, our library media specialists, and then technology curriculum specialists, and then the administrators are in the last area. And so overall, we're recommending a change of 0 FTE.
And we're bringing that for approval next Tuesday. Any questions? Thank you, Dr.
All right,
Lucy.
thanks. Moving right along to item 6D, the 2016-17 school calendar and the 2017-18 draft framework.
Absolutely my favorite topics of conversation this evening, and let me share why. Went back to the team, our calendar team, which is comprised of a teacher representative from each building, the administrators. We brought feedback, and so the calendar that I will be bringing you next week aligns with the Lake Forest calendar and still accommodates our Lake start. However, I want to go through a couple minor changes on it. You should be looking at the calendar that says 16-17 school calendar traditional aligns with Lake Forest. Does everybody have that one? Some things I want to point out. Number one, our institute days. We will have 2-day institute days for teachers before Labor Day. We will have one afterwards. That gives the middle school teachers time to move in that Tuesday and get situated. The blue half moon circles are the early release days, and we moved those next year to Wednesdays to combine with staff meetings, which will give us a longer amount of time to offer professional development or do alignment or whatever we're going to be doing. So that offers some great opportunities. One of the biggest things I want to point out to you is Monday, October 10th. You will see on Monday, October 10th that we are in school. That is a Columbus Day. When we went back to look at the end of the school year, and we debated every single break, and I will get to every single one with possibilities on why we decided that, the best day we could come up with to be in school and not end school on a Monday in June 19th, was Columbus Day. Now, there's many, many thoughts to this. Number one, we never ever want to interfere with anything that could be anywhere from a 4 to 5 to 6 day week for families. We felt like for families, parent-teacher conferences are the following week, so there'll be a little bit of time there. When we looked at Thanksgiving in November, something important to note with that, on the 23rd, without question, all of you had agreed, and teachers want the day off before Thanksgiving. So that's the first one we could not mess around with. When we looked at the Christmas holiday, everybody wants the 2 weekends. So to align with Lake Forest, we would go the 19th through the 30th. However, next year, January 2nd is an official holiday. I don't know if any of you knew that or not. Look it up, Google it, it's an official it's a holiday.
January 2nd.
Because January 1st is a Sunday, which means we played around with, let's have a Teacher Institute Day. I'm going to tell you, I think I've been doing this job too long. I will guarantee you we will have staff members that will not be able to make it because they're traveling on Sunday, flights are delayed, or planes are canceled. We won't have kids because it's January 2nd. So what we decided to do is, since Lake Forest is off anyway, we're going to come back on the 3rd for a Teacher Institute Day, so that gets all the teachers here on time, and then the kids come back the 4th. So that gives everybody a nice long winter break. Now, what that means, when you look through, we've got January 16th, that's Martin Luther King Day, that we're off. In February, we have parent-teacher conferences, that first week in February. President's Day, we always have to consider that we may be in school for a snow day. Knock on wood, hopefully we won't have that, or a flood day this year. We'll have to see. In March, we aligned spring break to Lake Forest spring break. We actually cut ours. I think they had one additional day on the end. We kept ours to 1 week because we kept looking at that end date of June. April, we have an early release day. April, we may actually have some consecutive weeks of instruction. So I was very excited about that. In May, we have a Teacher Institute Day on May 26th because we had to get our Teacher Institute days in per teacher contract. So, and we had to space those out not only to accommodate the teachers with the move, but also to try to get some good instructional things done in those days. We're off Memorial Day, and right now, we will end on Friday, June 16th, and we will end on Friday, June 16th, whether we use 1 snow day or 0 snow days. All right? Now, if we use more than 1 snow day, we're talking about coming back to school on June 19th. So it's going to have to be really serious for weather for me to cancel school next year. So I want to point that out to you because then as it flows into the next year.
Better buy their snowsuits, extra warm.
Yeah.
Sometime I'll tell you about my morning where we were in school and I drove around to all the bus stops up in Norwood because one of the buses started running 10 minutes late last year. Do you remember that? I will never forget that morning. Okay, so remember, we got off June 16th. Now we have the entire month of July and it's warm and everything's great. Now we get to August. We tentatively have August, the Institute days starting Monday and Tuesday, the 21st and 22nd, ending June 6th. We always like to allow 2 extra days if we had to have snow days. Now, this aligns the best right now with Lake Forest High Schools. Without getting into too much detail, I think most of you know, I've really seen it a lot in my area. The majority of very high achieving high school districts are all getting their final exams in before Christmas break, which means that they're all starting the 1st or 2nd week in August. So now, and I have to have Mike Semick explain it because I've actually heard the other superintendents talk about this. There's some new thing with colleges now with acceptance that if they're not getting their final exams done their senior year before Christmas, it's putting them, Philip, you probably know, it's putting them a month or 2 behind in the approval process. So Lake Forest is battling the parents and the families that want to spend time together in the summer versus college acceptance. Because this is a new thing, apparently.
Well, especially now that a lot of colleges are test optional, and some students are not doing test scores. The only thing you have to go off of is the academic record. So.
And what I'm hearing from superintendents, and I spent some time with high school superintendents last week, all the high school districts by me are all starting early next year. So I'm just letting you know that this is discussion. Right now, this would be the calendar. then as a board, we're gonna have to make some decisions. How important is it to align with Lake Forest High School? We have some families that don't have high school kids. We have other families that do. We have a lot of, kind of like the multi-age versus traditional. We have some families that love to start after Labor Day. I have parents ready to kiss me because we're starting after Labor Day this year. I have other parents that really want to align with the high school. So these are the dilemmas that we will be in. So right now, this is the calendar we will propose.
Does that early start align with Lake Forest?
The 21st and 22nd,
Mm-hmm.
it aligns, actually, I think they
We
start a
usually
little
go
bit
back
earlier.
before them, yeah. And we talked about, the last time we talked about this, you said you were gonna do a survey of parents to find
We
out
will.
their preference. So I would just wanna bring that back to all our memories.
We remember that very well.
Okay.
And that's why right now we just aligned it with Lake Forest High Schools. I will tell you, Nate and I were both invited to a high school calendar meeting in 2 weeks, so I'm sure it's going to be discussed. And whether it happens or not, we're going to have to make decisions, and I do think we're going to have to survey, because I think we're going to have a very mixed bag here. I do want to share one final thing with the calendars, and then I'll take any questions. Terry, because she's so wonderful, researched, because many of these days you have to apply for waivers for. And this school district was very smart in 2010 and applied for a universal waiver for all holidays to give us flexibility to be in school on any holiday we would like. So we don't have to do anything special for that. Thank you for looking that up for us, Terry. So now I'm ready for questions.
What's this going to do to some summer programs next summer, like Kaleidoscope?
For summer school?
Mm-hmm.
For which summer?
Next summer? No. Excuse me. Not this summer.
The
next
summer of
when-
17.
when we end really late.
We will obviously set them back a week or two, but we'll be getting out a week or two later. But that's the nature of the game. The park district typically schedules around us.
And I really want to get this to them, but I did not want to get it to them until I brought it to you first.
So yeah.
When does that normally end? Right now, when's Kaleidoscope over?
It typically ends July, the second week in July.
Oh, okay.
So we'll probably go through the end of July.
Okay.
Easier for parents.
And
Yeah.
we're hoping, because as I had mentioned previously, with us going late in June, there are many of our teachers are going to have childcare issues. So I'm hoping when I present this to Ron at the Park District, I can say, okay, here's our calendar for camps and things, but maybe you could help us by offering some special things for our teachers to drop kids off childcare a week or two in June. Because I think it'd be great for them and it'd be wonderful for our staff.
Right.
So that we have our teachers in the classroom.
Good.
All right?
Moving right along. Item E, the 403B and 457B plans. I believe Mr. Khan is going to handle that one.
And I certainly hope all of you read in detail. Go ahead, Jay.
Well, in an effort to provide investment opportunities primarily for our Tier 2 teachers who are coming in to the Tier 2 system for TRS and does not have the same pension benefits as Tier 1 members, as well as superintendents who have a renewed interest in financial planning. We've been looking at switching third-party administrators, and the benefits of doing this are, one, that our current third-party administrator is not as compliant as I would like, which doesn't protect the district. We're required to provide annual notice to our participants, which our current third-party administrator is not doing. And then we also need to have information sharing agreements with all the vendors, so all of the financial institutions that people are investing in, we're required to share data back and forth, and I don't think we have all those agreements in place. So I was looking for some additional third-party administrators. There's one that I've used in the past. Hodges has actually their own contract that they've negotiated with them or provided reviewed language with them because many other school districts use this third-party administrator. So we're looking at switching, and in addition to becoming more compliant, it will save the district money because we'd be switching to a model where the vendors or the investment companies pay the fees instead of the school district. We will be adding a 457B and deferred compensation arrangement, as well as Roth options. So instead, currently we only have a 403B, which is very similar to a 401k in private companies. So in addition to that, we'll be adding a 457 plan, and then the Roth options where you can put in money after tax. So it should round out the investment options for all the participants. And also there's a local representative who can deal with, right now our current third-party administrator is based in Texas, and though this new one is based in Florida, they have an office in Mundelein, so we will be getting a higher level of support from that person as well.
And Jay, you had the attorneys review all these already.
The attorneys reviewed this. Hodges has worked with this company in the past, and they actually already had an agreement that they have worked out with this company. So they just said, oh, we'll use the Hodges
template,
and that went fine. We will need to terminate our current agreement early. I've already spoken to our existing third-party administrator, and they are amenable to terminating it early. We're planning for a 1 month overlap so that we won't have a break in service. So to ease the transition, we'll have 2 companies for 1 month, and then we'll transition to the new company.
So does the board have to approve this? What's the procedure for that?
There is a series of resolutions. There's basically 2 resolutions. One is to terminate our current agreement and switch to the new third-party administrator, and then the other resolution gives the superintendent or designee authority to basically execute the new plans for the deferred compensation arrangements.
So, setting aside moving from the existing plan to the new plan, what incremental here is taking place? Simply the deferred component?
What incremental?
But I'm having maybe you need to refresh my
Sure.
memory a little bit, but we have an existing plan in place.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to
Yeah.
we're going to change that and move over to a different provider.
Right.
Are we adding anything incremental? I heard something about a deferred comp plan.
Right. So these 403Bs and 457s are deferred compensation plans.
That don't exist now, or
Right now we have a single 403B plan
that exists now?
that exists today.
And how many people participate in that?
We have about 50 participants.
50, okay.
I'd like to see our younger staff get involved with that, so we need some
And
education
that's
in that.
incremental income deferred beyond what's already taken out.
Beyond their TRS.
Beyond the TRS. So that's just like a 401k plan where you can
Okay.
set aside money before
So I have
tax.
two plans
invest
going
it.
here. One would be the existing TRS, and then incrementally they can elect to use a 403B. Okay.
And so what we would be adding is a 457. 457 allows you to, so the 403B currently is limited to $18,000 a year,
Right.
just like a 401k.
Right.
457 plan allows you to basically do the same. So they would have an option to, I'm sure not a lot of young teachers will take advantage, but you could invest 18,000 in one and 18,000 in the other. So if you're later in your career and you want to increase your retirement savings, before any allowed catch-up contributions when you're 50, if you're in your 40s and you decide I need to save more, you can take advantage of both plans. And then also the Roth option is going to be added for both plans. So if you wanted to invest some money after tax, you could do that as
And are
well.
the withdrawals regulated in any way, like the IRA withdrawals?
Right, so that's the other advantage to a 457 plan. 403B plan, you need to be retirement age or you pay a penalty. 457 plan, there's no penalty for early withdrawal. You can, and particularly when you leave your current employer. So if a teacher were to leave and go to another district, they could withdraw all their 457 money without penalty at any age.
But they should be taxes on it.
They would have to pay taxes on it.
Okay.
And then you can also take loans from these plans or hardship withdrawals. So if you have money sitting there and you need it for certain reasons,
Okay.
you're allowed to take that money out and then repay yourself. So there's some other advantages.
These are not it's not required that we offer these plans, correct?
these are not required, they're optional benefits for
Right.
staff.
But they make us more competitive, I would imagine, in the marketplace and attract,
Right.
assuming people know about them. I think perhaps younger teachers may not take advantage of them the way they probably should, but probably a good selling point.
Right.
And the IRS has recently made, increased the requirements on the school district so that we're liable for, if this plan isn't run well. So I think, we have fiduciary liability insurance that we're getting this year to protect the district in that respect. And then also having a good quality third-party administrator is important because they are ensuring that we're following the rules, and then if there's any questions from the IRS, they also step in and provide advice and counsel and support us in that.
Anybody else? Questions, comments, concerns? All right, moving on. Thank you, Jay. Appreciate it. Olson Transportation Contract Extension.
So with transportation contracts, they're required to be publicly bid. However, once you have a contractual relationship with a transportation provider, the current law allows you to essentially renew that contract indefinitely unless another third-party transportation company steps in and asks you to bid it, so if they want to compete for the business. We jointly bid our current contract with Lake Forest 67 and 115, and we share routes on this with Olson Transportation. We're currently happy with the service we're getting. We're at the end of a 2-year contract extension, and Olson has approached us and asked if we would like to renew our contract, extend our contract for an additional year at a 2% increase. The original contract that we assigned in 2011-12 had 3% increases per year built in, and the 2-year extension we had also had 3% increases built in. So for the last 5 years, we've had a 3% increase annually. So this would be a 2% increase, and I'm recommending that we extend the contract given the good terms, and also that we've had, Olson knows our routes well, and they provide good service.
What did we budget for an increase in the long range?
In the projections.
2%.
2%, so we're right on the nose.
Right.
Okay.
And is there any legal requirement, given the size of this contract, that we have to bid it out?
If we were going to get a new contract, we would need to bid it because our current contract is worth over $25,000. We currently spend, say, $350,000 a year with Olson. But we're allowed to extend this contract without bid, provided that there is not another company that asks us to bid. So if somebody wanted to get into this district to get our business, because we've already gone through the original contract term and the 2-year extension, they could say, we want you to bid it, and then we'd have to go out and publicly bid it. But given that nobody has given us a timely request to bid, we are able to extend with our current carrier.
Is there a limitation to how many times we can extend?
No, you can extend. Basically, you can do a contract for up to 3 years. Then you can do 1 2-year extension, and then you can only extend annually after that. But you can extend annually as long as you want until either you want to bid or somebody requests that you bid. And if you do open up the bid, then you don't know. Then you have to go with the low bidder, so you don't know who you're going to get. So if you do go up for bid, or
We've been working with Olson a long time, right?
we've been with them since 2004-05, as has Lake Forest.
Okay.
As long as I get the reimbursement from when they hit my car, I will recommend the 2% increase, because I'm still waiting for the check. I got hit a couple weeks ago.
Yes. And then the only other point is that gas is separate, so we pay for the routes, and then they charge us a cost for gas. So given the low gas prices today, we're benefiting from that.
Has it always been that way? It's always been that way, though, right? Has it always been that way when we pay for gas separately?
Our first contract was not, it was this flat rate, and then if gas prices went over a certain
Yeah.
threshold, then we had an additional charge. Now it's just strictly gas is.
But we've been
set.
doing it that way for a little while.
Since 2010-11,
Yeah.
our new contract, yes.
So we'll be bringing this for your approval next week also.
And if gas prices keep doing what we're doing, we're
They
good.
said it's not gonna be that much longer. I just heard a report on that today. So.
It saved us about $7,000 this year in transportation expenses.
All right. Oh, actually, diesel's not that cheap. Diesel's a lot more than gas. Any other questions? Okay, moving on. 5-year projections. I think we go back to Jenny again.
Yeah, we're just bringing this back because this is something we do as we talk about staffing. We realized that we went through it last week with you, so we just wanted to make sure there were no questions or things you thought about.
I would just like to, it's hard for me to add numbers and percentage, so I'd like to see the financial spreadsheet. I think I asked for that last time, and I'm too pressured to get that. But if I could see just these the actual numbers rather than the percentages and dollars mixed up. I mean, you got for
We'll
2000.
just bring him in and show him that'll be, or whatever.
Well, so you're talking about like revenue and expense annually.
Yeah,
for your-
consider the 2% increase, just put the number in there.
Because he needs to understand.
Yeah, and we have,
Assumptions, right?
These are a list of assumptions that you made. I'd just like to see the actual data, the
Okay.
actual financial data, the actual numbers.
Well, these are just percentage. These are just your inputs that you can vary these however you want, right?
right, no, I think I know what you mean.
Just a regular spreadsheet, so I could see for example, in 2019, I'd like to see what you think the total income is gonna be, what you think the total expenses are gonna be based on these assumptions.
Yeah, and we have that.
And I have it already, I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's actually right here, we didn't understand that.
So it's the actual data behind it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, because these are just a set of assumptions. The other thing at the bottom, how has your confidence level at all changed with respect to these 3 assumptions on the bottom?
The risks.
Pension cost shift and elimination of GSA and property tax freeze.
I've got no new information yet on those items, so
I would tell you that my certainty level with the property tax freeze goes up every day. Because it's gonna happen. I don't know what it's gonna look like or how long it's gonna be, but it is gonna happen. That's how districts that are poor are gonna stay afloat. So,
the only new information I have today versus last time we met was that we got a preliminary insurance renewal and it came in at 4.5%. So there's still 2 more months of data that goes into those renewals, and they tend to pad them a little bit because they don't like to come back with higher numbers than they tell you initially. So I had 5% in my projection, and I think that's a pretty good estimate.
Okay. Is there anyone? I think I recall you mentioning this last time. But is there any 1 or 2 primary drivers that are causing that projection to tail off in 18, 19, or 19, 20, 21?
It's essentially driven by the fact that our expenses are growing faster than our revenue. Yeah, so our revenue is limited by the property tax extension limitation law, and the recent CPI came in at 0.7 this year, or next year it's at 0.8. So
But if you
our revenue,
sorry,
our revenue is growing at less, 1%, and most of our expenses are in our teacher contract and insurance, and so those are growing at 3 and 4%, and so that just catches up with you in the out years.
But also, if you throw in the incremental forecast risks, if you assume there are no risks, which you didn't have when we made the original projection 2 years ago or last year, if you put those back into the numbers, that flattens out the decline. For example, in the last year, 2020-21, if you put back, $1.7 million, $1 million for property taxes, $382 for elimination GSA, $461, right? If you put that back into the pot, that bottom line would flatten out quite a bit.
Well, those risks are not built into the graph that you see. Those are incremental additional
Oh, they're
risks. Right. So that's saying
I thought they were in there.
what was presented was a base case, middle of the road, and then these are things that could make it look worse.
Okay.
So if oil prices go back up and we get a 2%
You mean when oil prices?
inflate and we get a 2% CPI, then that would be higher than the 1.5% assumed, and we would see it go back up a little bit.
Are you in these numbers, and I probably could tell if I were a little, if I spent more time on it maybe, but did you include expected increased revenue from a retailer that just moved in?
Target?
Target?
Yes.
That's included in
Yeah, and
this?
that you'll see that on the new property line.
Hansa Coffee or something.
In 2017-18, that's sort of the second half of the incremental property tax revenue from that complex.
But we didn't put anything in for the potential subdivision going in, right?
I'd say the things that have the biggest impact on our revenue would be the level of new property and the CPI. And so it's guessing those things is
Tough.
it's just a guess. Looking at history and looking at data from the assessor, I think we're seeing new property levels now lower than we did in the past when property values were increasing. There was a lot of building going on. So I think these are fairly conservative assumptions, but it could be more, it could be less. It's kind of a middle of the road guess.
Okay. You guys have any other questions? No. Not hearing any, we will move on and finish our discussion. Thank you, Jay, appreciate it. Offering the opportunity for public comment. If nobody would like to address the board. Does anybody on the board have anything they would like to say? Other than good night. So I will ask for a motion to adjourn at 8:27.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Not hearing any, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Excellent.